Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we'd do another mixed haul. Seems to be doing a lot of mixed hauls lately, not so much thrift store hauls or other hauls because the thrift stores and the private sales that I'm buying off, and I go into retail stores and buy stuff, order stuff off Amazon. It's all mixed in, so mostly these are all becoming mixed hauls rather than the other types of hauls. But um, they're improving. If you haven't watched any in a while, they're improving because I've added reviews and other things to it. Not only just showing you what I end up getting, but also whether it's good or not, or its significance and so on and so forth. Um, so let's get into it. First, let's do some CDs. All right. So I picked up this one, which is Know Your Enemy, which is what the one, two, three, four, five. The sixth album came out in 2001. This isn't their best album, although it's pretty good. If you like this kind of stuff, I think they're Welsh, if I remember correctly. They're from Wales, and one of the better bands from Wales back in the 90s and 2000s. And but the Holy Bible and Everything Must Go. Those two albums are probably their best, and this one's probably just below that because it's not bad. All their music is really good if you like this kind of style of music. It's I don't know, it's kind of 90s oriented, alternative rock kind of thing. Um, some people even include them in the Britpop category. I'm not sure if I would or not, but um, it's some good stuff, and they're I think they're Welsh. I could be wrong though. All right, so anyways, if you haven't tried the Manic Street Preachers, give them a listen. But you should probably listen to the Holy Bible, which is like their second or third album, and then Everything Must Go, which was their album after that, both in the 90s. Um, give those two a shot, and if you like them, then you'll probably like the rest of their stuff as well. I also picked up 3 CDs by Thrice. This, like pop, uh, sorry, punk band. It's kind of like a punk rock band, but kind of like with that throaty singing that was popular at one time. I can never get into that much, so but these guys came highly recommended. So I when I saw the CDs in a thrift store, I decided to pick them up and give them a try. But I didn't like them very much. So here's their Red Sky EP. All right, then you got the Artist in the Ambulance. All right, and then you got I don't even know how to pronounce this. Hesu. All right. Um, I listened to this one first, and then I listened to the, this one once or twice, and I said, "Yeah, I can't get into this. Don't really like this music much." So I'm gonna sell the CDs. All right. So that's Thrice. Now this I did get into. This one, out of all the CDs that I've bought lately, I've listened to the most, and it's extremely good. All right. So it's like a compilation of a bunch of different punk bands from the 90s, 2000s. Like The Offspring, No Effects. Who else is in this? Well, it's sort of a Total Chaos. Then put Pull, Pennywise, The Offspring, Down by Law, Bad Religion, Rancid. All right, so Snafu. Um, it's really good. If you like punk, you're gonna like this. All these Punkorama. I think there's more. I think this may be the first one, and there's a bunch after this of these punk CDs. All right, so if you ever see any of the Punkorama stuff, pick it up. It's pretty good. All right, we got Joni Mitchell's Chalk Mark in a Rainstorm. Um, her early stuff, my favorite is The Hissing of Summer Lawns, and most people's favorite is Blue. But she has, you know, pretty much every one of her albums, if you like, I don't know, she started off as like a folk artist, but then she kind of get more into jazz than folk. And she expanded her sound, and then she kind of got into, adult contemporary, kind of like easy listening stuff, usually with a backing jazz band. That's what this kind of is. So this one is one of her later albums. When did this come out? 1988. So she was big in the 60s and 70s, right? So this one came out in 88. Wasn't bad. Wasn't one of her greatest though. And then you got probably CCR's. best live concert. This one has all their hits, all their great songs, all live. This was where was this done? I think this was done in Oakland, wasn't it? In the yeah, January 31st, 1970, at the Oakland Coliseum. All right, so it has all the Proud Mary, Bad Moon Rising, Who'll Stop the Rain, Born in the Bayou, all their great Midnight Special, all their great songs, all on one live CD, and the performance is extremely good. Then we got Opera Sauvage by Vangelis or Vangelis. I don't know how you pronounce his name. He's a Greek electronics artist, and this guy, I cannot give him enough accolades. All right, this guy is extremely, extremely good. If you like electronic music, not the fast electronic music like EDM or anything like that, but that um, more relaxing type of experimental type of mellow sound that kind of puts you in a calming mood after, let's say, a long, stressful day at work. You come home, you listen to Vangelis, it'll calm your mind. All right, he is just extremely, extremely good. From his soundtracks like Chariots of Fire, but his probably best soundtrack is Blade Runner. The Blade Runner soundtrack. Listen to that soundtrack. That's one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. Is the Blade Runner soundtrack? It made that movie. I mean, you have Rutger Hauer and Harrison Ford's acting, and you got the Ridley Scott cinematography with the buildings and everything. The future, it's all dark, it's all rainy, it's all depressing, but the music in it just sets the mood for the whole film. And Vangelis does a great job. And this is another great one. This one he kind of gets more into. Well, it's opera sauvage if you want to read into it or whatever. But all of his stuff, I have not. He's got a lot of CDs, probably over 20 of them, is my guess. And every time I find a new one, I just found about 7 or 8 of his albums recently, and I've been listening to those as well. I haven't come across a bad album. Just extremely good. You like electronic music? He's one of the guys that you should be putting on top of your list. You have guys like Aphex Twin, 9 Inch Nails, good electronic industrial stuff, and this guy's up there with all the greats. If not, he may even be my all-time favorite electronics. I like what's the German guys that started it all, Autobahn and Computer World, Kraftwerk. Starting with Kraftwerk, going on, just some great electronic music, and Vangelis is right in there. All right, now we got a Canadian band, Lowest of the Low. This is when they got back together because they had broken up, and then they got back together. And this came out in 2004. Their most notable album, probably one of the greatest albums in Canadian history, is Shakespeare My Butt. But all their stuff is good. If you like Canadian music, you want to explore some Canadian music, Lowest of the Low should be on your radar. All right, so that's another Canadian that should be on your radar is Daniel Lanois with Shine. This guy is extreme. I mean, he's produced some of the greatest albums of all time, and he's made some of the greatest albums of all time. But he flies under the radar because he's Canadian, right? A lot of people know Daniel Lanois if they get right into music, and this album is extremely good in the mellow kind of way as well, right? So I'm getting older, so it seems like I'm more attracted to more mellow music rather than faster speed type of music, but I still get into it. But Daniel Lanois is one of the greats, all right? So that's Shine. Then you have a EP by Bell and Sebastian, or is this is a single, Dog on Wheels single. Bell and Sebastian, they're what? They're Scottish? Are they Scottish? I think they're Scottish. And this one came out in '97. You should pick up Tiger Milk, The Boy with the Arab Strap. Those albums, extremely good. Again, mellow style of music. I picked up on these guys back in the late '90s, early 2000s with Tiger Milk, and I picked them up, and I would listen to them a lot with Nick Drake as well. But the cool thing is the lead singer, the male, I can't remember his name. Um, he's got like a sweet saccharine voice, and the music is really light and beautiful as well. But some of the lyrics are pretty dark, right? So you got this beautiful, it's like this beautiful sounding voice, kind of like a feminine type of male voice, and beautiful music. But then if you really listen to the lyrics of Bell and Sebastian, um, a lot of the lyrics are kind of dark, so there's that that juxtaposition of dark lyrics with beautiful music, and it kind of just grabs your brain. So extremely good music, Bell and Sebastian. And here's my favorite John Lennon album, the Plastic Ono Band. This one is probably his greatest. My all-time favorite song by him is "Working Class Hero," and it's on that album. But the whole album is really good. Um, most of John Lennon stuff, but "Imagine" would probably be something that people would probably cite as his best. But I would say um, Plastic Ono Band is his best album. All right, so that's some CDs. Uh, not a bad one in the least. Out of all these, are any of these the greatest albums of all time? I like to point out whenever I pick up one if it's the greatest album of all time, but I don't think any of these ones, would make the top. Maybe this one. This one might make a top 100 list. I may put that in the top 100 list, the Lennon Plastic Ono Band album. But the other ones are just good. And anyways, all right. So what else? I picked up recently duets, which is basically I really like Paul Giamatti's acting. I don't know why him guys like him and let's say the name slipped me, but these character actors, the actors that can play almost any role, like Gene Hackman or what's his name from Jaws? He plays the scientist on Jaws. What's his name? Was in Richard Dreyfuss. Another guy like that. But I really like Paul Giamatti, especially in that wine. What was that wine book where they go into wine country and drink wine? What was the name of that? Anyways, I'll put it up here. He's such a good actor, and this is one of his earlier roles. You got Huey Lewis from Huey Lewis and the News, that really great pop rock band from the '80s, all over the Back to the Future soundtrack and other things. Right, they were big in the '80s. He's on this, and basically this is a karaoke film, a film about guys having fun singing karaoke. So I haven't seen it yet, so I'm going to watch it and I'll review it in the next video I do, like a haul video or whatever. I'll review it. Um, but it intrigued me because Paul Giamatti was in it. So, um, and I also picked up from the same guy two Criterion sets of horror movies. Okay, so we got a Jim Jarmusch film called Down by Law. I have not watched it yet, but this is in the Criterion collection. It is number 166 in the Criterion collection, so I can add this one to the Criterion. And I also got the Guillermo del Toro trilogy of films, also in the Criterion collection. Now, this one does not have a number on it, so when you put it on your shelf, if you're going to put it this way, there's no number, right? And then you have the three films with the numbering, which are not sequential, by the way. So you're left with the dilemma. Where are you going to put it in your library if it's all in numerical order? Because the numbers are 666, 838, and 551. All right. So it's interesting. The Devil's Backbone, they gave 666 to 666 in the library. So I bet you a lot of people will just, since this isn't numbered, they may just take it out and toss this and then put these in the numerical order in their collection, right? But I don't like to do that. I like to keep the box sets in the box set, so I'll probably just put this at the beginning or the end with the other box sets that aren't numbered. But the Criterion collection will number some of these, so they'll give you a box set, and many of the box sets are good because they're all in order. They all have sequential ordering, numerical ordering, all right? And then they'll give the box set a number, but don't know why they do that. Like they should. This means that this is an afterthought of them. They're going, okay, what's another way we can package Del Toro's films and sell them to the public instead of just selling them individually? Well, let's sell them in a box set, three of them in a box set, but they're randomly numbered, so they don't fit anywhere in the library, and they don't number this one to fit it in the library. So usually the box sets, the best ones are the ones that are sequentially numbered, um, but without the number on the actual box set. Why should the box set have a number, right? So let's say you're wondering how many films are in the Criterion collection, and you go through all the numbering. Let's say there's 1,400 numbers, you think there's 1,400 films, give or take. But no, like 30 of them may be a box set number that have no film attached to them, right? So it's kind of strange that they number some of the boxes and they don't number some of the other ones, right? So I don't know how I'm going to put this up. Like I said, I'll probably put it at the beginning or the end of the library, um, but I'll probably keep the box set together. If you've never watched Del Toro's films, this is some of the other ones, not like Pan's Labyrinth, which is a big one, or didn't he do the those big you know Japanese Gaiji films where he had the big robots that people would go into? What the name? Pacific Rim. Didn't he do that? He did the Pacific Rim films as well, which were pretty good actually. Although I found the guy from Sons of Anarchy. If you watch Sons of Anarchy and then you watch the main guy in Sons of Anarchy, I forget his name. I'll just put it here. He's the star of the first Pacific Rim, um, and he seemed out of place. You know what I mean? You think of him as a motorcycle running type of tough guy with a big heart or whatever, but like the typical a bad boy, and then you put him into this film, and he's like, not that character at all, and he seems out of place. That motorcycle guy with no higher formal education or whatever into running. Anyways, the people who hired him to do that, I think they miscast him, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, so this is the box set for Guillermo del Toro's films um, in the Criterion collection. I got some more of that stuff out. I also found this one at a thrift shop, and that's the Dogma DVD with the slipcover. All right. A lot of the times you'll find, when you can find, because they're not making them anymore, but you'll find it like that, right, without the slipcover. All right. It's a double. It's a double disc. All right. It's got a double two discs in it. All right. Okay. But these aren't being made anymore because of an issue with the Weinsteins, right? So this was basically what a Miramax film, Miramax Disney film, and then Disney, a lot of the Christian right looked at this film and didn't like it, and they started protesting with Disney. So Disney wanted to drop this film. So what happened was the Weinsteins bought this film personally, so they actually own this film now. The Weinsteins own this film personally, not through their, not through Miramax or whatever company they have. They own it personally. So they own it personally, and they distributed it on DVD and Blu-ray. But the Blu-rays, they didn't distribute very much of them, and now it's out of print, and so is the DVD. So this is not, and it never ended up getting a digital release on Netflix or anything else. So the only way you're going to watch this film is if you find the Blu-ray or the DVD. And so there was like a run on these things, and you can sell this for 3 or 4 times the amount of a regular DVD, just because it's difficult to find. And if you have it with the slip cover, even more so, it's easy to sell, right? But it's not like it's rare or anything. You can go on eBay and you can find 20, 30 copies of this being sold anywhere in the the $15 to $30 range kind of thing, right? So it's not, but when you can pick it up for $1 at a thrift store, I already have it, so I'll sell it for like maybe $10. So and this is my personal favorite Kevin Smith film. If you have not watched it, it's about two angels, uh, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. They're two fallen angels, and they want to get back in heaven. So there's this loophole in the Bible that they're using to get back in heaven. But of course, if they get back into heaven, it means that God was wrong, and God is never wrong, or God is omnipotent, always right. So that um, paradox will end up destroying existence, right? So other people are there to try to stop them from getting back into heaven, right? So um, it's really a funny film. It's really an intellectually kind of funny film, um, and you got Salma Hayek in it as well, and her beauty can't be understated. Uh, but there's this section where there's this shit devil that was kind of gross, and I didn't like that part all that much, but the rest of it. And the topper was Alanis Morissette as God. That was kind of that put it over the top for me. I laughed my head off at that, right? So, and she played this, like not like this tough guy. She played almost like a fluffy angel unicorn type of character that didn't talk or anything, right? So, anyways, it was quite funny. I think it's his best film. Like if I was to take all of his film, like they put Chasing Amy, which I have here, in the Criterion collection. If I was going to put a Kevin Smith film in the Criterion, it would be Clerks, which was his first, or Dogma, which was his best, in my opinion. Anyways, all right. So that's Dogma. Um, put it back in this plastic so it doesn't get. All right. What else do we have? Okay, let's do a book. All right. Enrich Fromm, Man for Himself: An Inquiry into the Psychology of Ethics. This is half psychology, half psychoanalyst, half philosophy. Heinrich Fromm is one of the great names in psychology, up there with Freud and see, there goes the name, Jung, Freud, Jung, and some others. Uh, and this is one of his better books. This takes on ethics, whether ethics. It's all over YouTube and Twitter about all the atheists coming out, like Christopher Hitchens. He just died, R.I.P. Recently, but they all argue that you don't need a god or a higher power in order for you to be moral, right? That it's almost like an innate thing in people. I don't think it's an innate thing. I think you're taught morality, right, from your parents and from others, or from your behavior. If you start behaving in a certain way and others get hurt and you have a guilty conscience, you'll stop doing that behavior and think it's wrong. So you will develop over time, as you get into adulthood, a a moral code or a moral way of living. Um, Religious people say that that comes from God, and if you eliminate God out of it, then morality just becomes relative on what you think is moral and not what the world would think is moral. Everybody has their own personal morality, right? And therefore society won't function because if I don't think prostitution is wrong, then you understand. If I don't think child pornography is wrong, do you understand? Everybody has their own. But what Christians and other religious groups always say is that there's an absolute morality, and what non-religious people say is no. Morality is relative depending on the situation and the time period and everything, right? So there's always that argument. Well, that's what he talks about in this book. So if you haven't picked up this book and you want a little more in depth from a psychological point of view and a philosophical point of view, Fromm is one of the big names, and his books are always really interesting to read. All right, so that's Heinrich Fromm. Then we got an autobiography of yoga, Paramahansa Yogananda. All right, and it's his biography. And this is probably the best-selling yoga biography in the world. All right, and there's a reason for it. It's supposed to be really, really good. All right, so I have not read it personally, but I picked it up more to resell it than to read it. Um, I'm not much into yoga or Buddhism and that. I know the basic tenets of it, and I don't think they're incorrect. Let's put it that way. But to follow any further than that, I don't have an interest in it. All right, so. But the book will resell pretty easily. All right, so that's autobiography of a yogi. All right, and then I picked up this guy from a private sale. All the Ringu films. You have Ringu, Ringu 2, and Ringu 0, and then you have the first sequel to Ringu. What was it called? It was called uh, uh, Spiral. So basically, what's his name? George Inda, um, wrote the Ringu books, and he wrote a few of them. And so they did a movie on the first one called the Ringu, and then it was popular enough that they did a second film, which was from his second book, which was called Spiral. But then that film kind of bombed, all right, and so then they stopped. But then they said, hey, let's do a direct sequel to the original film, which Spiral kind of isn't. It moves on to another. I mean, it's still about that, but it's kind of in a different direction. And then they did a direct sequel afterwards, and that one was a bit more popular, and it was called Ringu two, right? And then they came out with a third film, which was like a prequel to it, um, and that was Ringu Zero, right? So um, I sat down to watch them. I watched the first one, which was good, and then I watched the second one. And the second one, Ringu Two, I mean, I didn't watch Spiral. Um, I kind of got bored of it. So when I first watched Ringu back when it first came out, it was the late '90s, right? Didn't this come out in the late '90s? I think 1997 or something, 1996. Anyways, um, yeah, that creeped me out pretty good, right? So, um, but then I watched it, like I said, in the last couple of weeks, and it didn't. I think it's a one-time watch. I think the first time you watch it, you'll get creeped out by it, but then you already know how creepy it is, and the second time you watch it, it's not as creepy. So it kind of doesn't hold up on a bunch of repeat viewing. But I got this the whole all four films in a nice Arrow box set, one of those hard boxes, um, for a really good price, right? So I picked it up. So you got Ringu, all right. Then you got Ringu Two and Spiral on this one, all right. Did it give you two discs for it or just one? I think it's only one. Yeah, they got both films on one disc, all right. And Ringu itself has one disc as well, all right. So, and then you have the third film, which is the prequel that goes into the story that happened before. Um, and So you got all four films in one collection from Arrow. They're all restored, 2K restorations, most of them, I think. And yeah, it's a beautiful, nice box set. It'll look good on the shelf with the other stuff. All right, so that's Ringu. Picked up Robertson Davies' The Cornish Trilogy. Now he has the Deptford Trilogy and the Cornish Trilogy. I did not read these books. He seems a little bit too highbrow in reading for me. Um, but he kind of delves into the fantasy type of fiction, right? So kind of surrealness and stuff. And the Canadian author, one of the highly regarded Canadian authors. But if you were to get the three individual films, which are The Rebel, Angels, What's Bred in the Bone, and The Lear of Orpheus, if you were to try to sell those books individually, unless you have all three books together as a set, um, and sell them together, you may sell them, but you can't sell them individually for some reason, right? Um, they're not exactly related to each other a bit, um, but if you can find the trilogy in one book, it sells really easy. This one and the Deptford trilogy. So when I saw this, I said, okay, I'll pick it up. And there's Chasing Amy, the single and sole entry into the Criterion collection for um, Kevin Smith, the director. I think they put this in. It's one of the ones, like like The Rock and some other ones that are kind of like put in to sell good so that they can build up some money to put in some more obscure films in the collection. So this is kind of like a money maker for them, right? And selling it secondhand, you don't sell it for very much. You don't sell it in the same price range as, let's say, a Fellini film or something, right? Um, but it's good. It's basically Ben Affleck plays a comic book creator, and Jason Lee is his best friend and illustrator. Um, and they make comic books together. And he ends up meeting a girl. What's her name? The girl with the typical male name. What is her name? Joey Lauren Adams. Joey Lauren Adams. She was in Mallrats as well, and some other of Kevin Smith's films. Um, so Ben Affleck kind of is smitten by her and falls in love with her, but she is a lesbian, has no interest in him, and there's that tension because of it, right? That's really good, and Smith explores kind of that psychology behind loving somebody who can't love you back and that kind of thing. It's a pretty good film, but it's not his best. There's probably three other films that I think are better. Clerks, I really like Clerks 2 even better than this one. I like Mallrats better than this one, and my favorite Dogma I like better than this one. But this is the one that they put in the Criterion collection. All right, then we got Sinclair Ross and Ernest Buckler by Robert D. Chambers. It's basically a write-up of each of the two Canadian authors. There's a whole series of these books. They're called Studies in Canadian Literature. They're difficult to find, so when I saw this, I said I'll pick this up because I have a bunch of these already, and they're little biographies of Canadian authors, right? So it was meant to for students and others to familiarize themselves with in Canada with Canadian authors because Canada has a tendency to attach themselves and be more receptive to American or British or French culture than it is their own culture, right? Their own culture seems to take second seat, right? So every once in a while you have a breakthrough person, like I don't know who, like James Cameron, maybe for films, maybe like Margaret Atwood for books, like Neil Young for music. Um, but they usually end up leaving Canada in order to make their names, right? They usually move to the States. Um, so it's good to get like books, and there's a whole bunch of them with all on Canadian. It's a literary criticism on Canadian authors, right? So I didn't have this one, so I picked it up. Then you have the greatest book in for if you're going to read any one book or set of books about, let's say, the fall of the Roman Empire, you would read Gibbon, if I remember correctly. Gibbon's like 5 or 6 or 7 volume set of the rise and fall of, or the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. That's the one you probably want to read. Well, for World War II and Nazi Germany, you would read this book, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by Shire. All right, it's the best book when it comes to the rise of Nazi Germany, how they came about after World War II, Hitler's rise to power, and the whole shebang. If you want to get a really good overview of the whole thing, you can't do better than this book. All right, so this is a great book as well. What else do we have? We got so much stuff here; it's just crazy. All right, we got The Great Outdoors, Dan Aykroyd and John Candy. This is a John Hughes film, produced film. Him and what's the director's name? Uh, Howard Deutsch. Now, Howard Deutsch directed a lot of pretty cool films, but usually he's associated with John Hughes. John Hughes will direct some of his films, and then he would get Howard Deutsch to direct others. At least I don't know what their relationship exactly is, but and Deutsch would actually direct a lot of sequels, so um, that were pretty good as well. Sometimes as good as the originals, like the whole 10 yards, the whole 9 yards and the whole 10 yards with Bruce Willis. What's his name from Friends, where Bruce Willis plays a hitman. Those two films are quite funny, and Ditch directed one of those. But a lot of the movies he directs are John Hughes films, and this is one of them, right? So, uh, and it's basically about two guys that don't like each other. They're brother-in-laws, and they end up going on vacation. One invites themselves to it, and the other one didn't invite them. And anyways, the two families just don't get along, and there's a rivalry between these two guys that is really hilarious on film. And John Candy died too young. Let's put it that way. All right. So, and then we have, there's The Rock. All right. So, The Rock is in the Criterion collection. I do have the Criterion of The Rock on DVD, but I didn't have it on Blu-ray. So when I came across this one, I picked it up. And this is Nicolas Cage and Ed Harris. Ed Harris actually plays the bad guy in this film. He plays like a terrorist who goes on on Alcatraz, ransoming. What the hell was it? It's been a while since I've seen the film. Anyways, he's the bad guy in it, and Nicolas Cage is the good guy who's going to stop Ed Harris, and he needs help because he doesn't know Alcatraz as good as Sean Connery, who spent a lot of time in Alcatraz as a prisoner. So them two join forces and go try to stop Ed Harris, and it's quite a fun film. It's one of the few films that I actually enjoy from the guy that did all the Michael Bay. He did all the Transformer films and bad. He did Pearl Harbor, which I kind of was okay, but it was not as great as it could have been. The Island is my favorite by him, and The Rock isn't bad either. It is Michael Bay, right? Yeah, he did Armageddon, which also was in the Criterion. So you have The Rock and Armageddon in the Criterion collection, just to bring in money, right? So, all right. Then we got Will Ferrell in Elf. All right. This is directed by Jon Favreau, my favorite film by Favreau. Then we did a lot of the Iron Man films. But he did a one where he played a chef. What was that? Was it called Chef? I think it was called Chef, wasn't it? How he had a food truck and then he built up his food truck. It was quite an interesting film. You wouldn't think it was, but it's an extremely good film if you haven't seen it. And this one's great because it's he's an elf, one of Santa's elves, but he's not like a little guy. He's a big 6'2" guy, and he decides to go to New York to go find his dad, and his dad ends up being James Caan, right, in that film. All right, so that's not bad. Found another copy of Chasing Amy, so I have two copies to sell. And then we have Sophie Hannah's continuation of the Agatha Christie Hercule Poirot uh, mysteries. All right, and it's called The Monogram Murders. So people will buy these books because it's attached to Agatha Christie, and especially the ones that really like the Poirot books by Agatha Christie. She ends up, Sophie Hannah ends up continuing with Poirot, the Agatha Christie Private Eye. All right, then we got. So I always talk about I collect the modern library and a section of the modern library. Some of the books that can't fit into the smaller paperback size hardcovers that the modern library put out like 8 or 900 of. Um, so they put out some giants. There's like just over 100 modern library giants. And Wealth of Nations is number G32. So it's the 32nd volume of the giants, and it's Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith. Adam Smith just goes through everything economics from money to interest rates to all this different stuff. It's a classical economic test, and it's still read today because all the basic tenets in this is where you should start if you want to learn about economics, right? So I read it about 20 years ago. Quite interesting. There's another of the modern library, but the original ones, the smaller ones. This is the brother Karamazov by Dostoevsky. It's number 151 in the collection. All right. This is probably his second best book. His best book, obviously, being Crime and Punishment. I've not read the brother Karamazov. It's on the list. So when I read it, I'll review it. I just picked it up because it's a great book, and I didn't have it in the modern library editions that I had. Right. Then we got Green Lantern. Uh, Growing up, this was my favorite superhero. Was Green Lantern. I always liked that sticking his hand in the lantern, and you can use where everybody else had certain powers. Green Lantern could use his powers in any way he wanted. Just his imagination would be his only limit, right? And I always thought that was pretty cool when I was a kid. Um, so whenever we would play superheroes and stuff like that outside, when I was like 6'5", 6'4", 7 years old, we'd go outside because the parents would kick us out. Go outside, come back when it's lunchtime or supper time or whatever, right? So, and we'd play superheroes. I would always play Green Lantern. So when they brought it to the screen, it's not the greatest of films, but I still enjoyed it because I'm such a fan of the Green Lantern, right? So, and it's a nice steelbook that I got for a really good price. So, and it's in a plastic case that I put my steelbooks in. All right, so that's Green Lantern. Then we got The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. Basically, one of the great biographies or diaries, I guess you could call it, in history. She's a Jewish girl. Her and her family and another family were hidden by some. It was in Amsterdam, wasn't it? It was in Holland, wasn't it? In a crook at the back um, of the. It was a house or a warehouse. I can't remember which one. Correct, but they were being hidden from the Nazis when the Nazis came into Austria, or was it in Austria? Anyways, Austria or Holland, and so she writes a diary of the experience with her family and her and the other family and a boy. in the other family that she was kind of interested in, and you get all that. She was only like what 12 or 13 at the time, but the Nazis, find out about them, and they all went off to the concentration camps, and you never heard from her again, right? So this diary, there was one guy that ended up surviving it, and he ended up holding on to her diary, and that's how it ended up getting published. And it's the typical thing that, well, not atypical because you're not most people aren't trapped in the back of a warehouse hiding from the Nazis, right? But um, got the typical 12, 13-year-old girl type of writing. Um, the ending is really uh, heart wrenching when you read it because there is no real ending to it. You'll have an entry, and then that entry kind of finishes, and then you're waiting for the next entry, and there is no more of the book, and and the reason why is because she went off to her death, right? Uh, so that's pretty brutal at the end of reading this. It's not a happy story, let's put it that way. All right, and then I found this book, the original illustrated Sherlock Holmes. Agatha Christie sells really well as in the mystery genre, but so does Sherlock Holmes. It's one of the best-selling mystery, like his The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, The Return of Sherlock Holmes, A Study in Scarlet, The Hound of the Baskervilles, all these books. Most of it was written in the Strand magazine, if I remember correctly, as more shorter stories or like chapters in a longer story kind of thing. But this has basically all of his writings all in one volume, all illustrated. All right, so it's a popular book. I have all of his complete stuff already, so I'm just going to resell this. But I picked it up for like $3 or $4. I'll sell it for like maybe 10. So, what else? Okay, we have Jung. I spoke with Jung earlier. All right, so Jung wrote a book. This is called Psychology and the East. All right, Jung was fascinated by the East, the psychology of it, right? The religious psychology. So basically, he goes through things like Buddhism and Hinduism and the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I wrote it down because I'd forget. He goes, so he talks about Buddhism, he talks about Islam, he talks about the I Ching, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and others. And there's a bit of a travelogue in there on his thoughts when he was traveling through India in this as well. So Jung is one of the big names in psychology, psychoanalysis. He was like a contemporary of Freud. They kind of worked together a bit, but they kind of split ways on some of the thinking. And you should read Jung. You should really read him, as well as Freud, and Fromm and those guys. But this guy should be on your reading list. All right. Um, that's Psychology of the East. And I found this big tome of over 5,000 chess problems. So all this huge volume, right? So it just goes through all of them. All right. So you sit down with this book and a chessboard, and you set up pieces the way they set it up in this one, and then you try to solve that problem, and it shows you how to if you can't yourself, and it makes you a better chess player. Chess is a really great game. Um, so many games that you play are all chance related. All right, so there's um, if the game involves cards or dice, it's chance related, and you can get good at the game. All right, but there's always a chance percentage involved in it. All right, so if you play, let's say, Texas Hold'em, you can be the greatest Texas Hold'em player in the world, and still others will beat you more than you will beat them. All right, you'll just win at a little bit higher rate than an average player, right? Just because of experience and reading people and things like that, right? Backgammon, another great game that's like been around for thousands of years, but involves rolling two dice. All right, so if your opponent gets the better rolls at the time that he needs it, he will beat you. All right, and there's nothing you can do about it. So usually when you're playing chess, you'll play a number of games, not just one, because one is if you win or lose, it's more of a chance thing. But if you, let's say, play, let's say, the best of 9 or the best of 11 or something, then your skill at backgammon will outperform the other person's skill if you're better than them, usually. But you only may win like 6-5 or something, right? So, um, so there's that, right? So anything with dice or cards, there's always an element of chance to it. But something, let's say, like checkers, there's no chance to checkers. All right, there's no chance to chess. Whoever has the better mind, the better player, will win. All right, and they'll win consistently, like all the time, over an inferior player. There is no chance involved. It's just who has the better strategy and who knows how to play the game better. All right. So it's an extremely popular game for people with like advanced minds, and this goes through a whole bunch of the problems. So if you haven't seen this, if you see this book around, pick it up. If you enjoy chess, and go through all the different, it'll make you all the different scenarios that they have here. It'll make you a better chess player. All right. So what else here? Okay, we got Plato's The Republic. Probably this one and Aristotle's Politics or Poetics are the best of the ancient philosophers. I mean, you got the pre-Socratic philosophers as well, Stoicism, things like that. But this is probably I would put this as probably the best philosophy book ever written. Probably Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra would be up there as well. Heidegger's Being and Time would be another one. But there's a whole bunch of them, right? But if you're looking at political philosophy, the books that you're going to be reading is this one, Aristotle's The Politics, a few others like John Locke's second treatise on government. You got Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes. You got some of Jean-Jacques Rousseau's writing, The Social Contract, and other stuff like that. You got Machiavelli's The Prince would be another one that you would want to read. So political philosophy is quite enjoyable to read. And the more you read it, the more you realize that the situation that you're in politically with, with democracy or wherever you are, how democracy came about and all of that, you get a really good idea of how things aren't as random as you think they are. And somebody created them to be that way, right? And this is one of the books you're going to read. All right. And here's Homer's The Odyssey. When you're reading Western literature, most of the time you'll be starting with this guy with his Iliad, which is basically a big long poem on the Trojan War, and then his second po- long poem or whatever, which is the Odyssey, which is Odysseus leaving after fighting in the Trojan War to get back to his wife, because he's a king in where is he king of? Anyways, I'm slowing this down. Anyways, wherever he is a king of, but he ended up pissing off a god, one of the gods, and this god decided to make his journey difficult, and it takes him 20 years to get back home. He ends up stuck on an island, ends up fighting, like a cyclops and all these other stuff that goes on during it. That a lot of the Greek mythology comes from Homer, and it's called the Odyssey. All right. Then we got House of Cards, the original BBC miniseries. Basically, it talks about this guy. He ends up he's for the Conservative Party, and he used dastardly means to try to become prime minister. And basically, the American version of it with Kevin Spacey, also named House of Cards, is basically based on this one. But if you like British, like The Office was extremely good, the British version, and then they did an American version of it, which was also funny. But the original one with Ricky Gervais was extremely funny, although kind of biting and cruel. Um, the BBC seems to put out a lot of good stuff, but it's always short. Because how the BBC works is they get a clump of money and they decide they're going to do something. They give that money to some creative person, and they do a series. But the series has, it says, okay, we're going to do it for 20 episodes or whatever, and then that's the end of it, right? They have a budget for this many episodes. They do those episodes, and then that thing is done, and then they move on to something else, right? Whereas in American television is more like, okay, we'll get together, we'll do a pilot. Oh, we like that pilot. Okay, let's do a season. See how that season works. Oh, it's a good season. All right, we'll do another season. We'll continue doing seasons until the public gets bored of it, right? And they just keep going on, right? So So usually the BBC stuff is shorter than the American versions of it, but this is extremely good. If you haven't watched this, watch the original. If you like House of Cards, the American version of it, watch this one, see what you think. All right. Then we got a Canadian novel called Saint Urbain's Horseman. Saint Urbain is in a section, the Jewish section in Montreal, suburb of Montreal, or an area of Montreal. Is basically one of Mordecai Richler's greatest books, although probably The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz is probably his best. Um, but this is a really nice New Canadian Library version. Um, if you haven't heard about the New Canadian Library, I've done a video on it and other videos I've pointed out. This is the fifth cover in the library for this novel, and it's one of his best, basically. All right, it's about a guy who has dreams that don't really pan out, and he has like a cousin who's like a war hero from the Spanish War, and he's like a great guy, and he looks up to this guy. Anyways, it's a pretty good novel if you haven't read it. And then we got Paul Hiebert's another in the New Canadian Library. This is called Sarah Binks, which is basically this is like a biography of a created person. It's not a real person, but it's written like it is, right? And it's quite a comical novel. It's up there. I think it won the Stephen Leacock Award. Stephen Leacock being Canada's greatest humorist. He wrote like Acadian Adventures of the Idle Rich and Literary Lapses and other books that are just friggin' hilarious. I mean, he puts like Mark Twain to shame. I mean, I've read Mark Twain's humor stuff and it's pretty funny. Roald Dahl, some of his stuff is really funny as well, but nothing compared to Stephen Leacock. You've got to read Stephen Leacock if you haven't. And this is up there. This novel is up there with Stephen Leacock. I think it won the actually Stephen Leacock, they started an award, like the Governor General's Award for fiction or poetry. You got that kind of thing. Well, there's a Stephen Leacock Award for the best humor writing in Canada in a given year or whatever. And I think this one, actually, I don't know if it says on the back or not. But, anyways, it's quite a funny novel if you haven't read it. What else do we have here? Did that. All right, we have Dombey and Son by Charles Dickens. This one is part of the Oxford World's Classics, the newest version of it. They're really nice books, but as you can see, the page is brown because paper stock isn't all that great. But the books look really nice on the shelf. I would put them in a bag if I'm not reading them. If I want to display them on a shelf, like because they're all uniform, looking like this, right? Um, and I have not read Dombey and Sons. I've read quite a bit of Dickens' work, but this is one of the books that I haven't read yet, so I don't know much about it. All right, and then we have two books in the Arcturus collection. The cheap books that you find in the bookstores. These usually sell for like $5 or $6 each. We got Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell and Tender in the Night by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I usually put these together in groups of 10 and sell them for like $30, $5 each, or 10 for 30. And they're all classics in literature, right? So, all right, what else do we have? Oh, we got. I do not have very many 4Ks in my collection, but they're starting to come up on the secondary market at reasonable prices, more than they did, let's say, 6 months ago. And I found this one, Captain Marvel, in the can't remember her name, but this is not a bad film. It's basically about a girl who thinks she's human, or she is human, and she was kidnapped without a memory. Her memory was erased, and she's working for like a foreign planet or whatever, and she ends up finding out a secret about her. And anyways, there's this like nuclear explosion that gives her these fantastic powers or whatever, and then she ends up, because she has amnesia, she ends up slowly remembering who she is. All right, and she was like a fighter pilot on Earth, and she's an Earthling kind of thing. So um, it's a fun, not a great film, but it is a good film, and in 4K it looks really nice. Uh, so I picked it up because I got it for a reasonably cheap price. I also got this for a cheap price, and that's Warhorse. Spielberg film. All right. Basically, it follows a horse through World War One. Originally, it's on a farm in England or Scotland or whatever, and then it ends up being confiscated to be used in the war to fight the Germans. And then its original owner ends up finding it while he's at war as well. And then, and anyways, it's if you love horses, you'll probably really like this film. It's pretty good. I don't think it's one of the greatest films by Spielberg, but I collect him, so I want all of his films. And we got this Oliver Stone documentary, South of the Border. It's basically about the changes in South America where it's moved to the left, and mostly about Chavez in Venezuela. Most of the film takes place about him, but it also goes in, like with Hugo Chavez, but it also goes to other like other nations in South America who are like leaning to the left, and Chavez end up like nationalizing the oil industry and all that, and it goes about Oliver Stone. There's a documentary on it. All right, I watched it. It was pretty good. All right, and then we got. Um, Now I had this on DVD, this actual package, but this is the Blu-ray version of it. So I picked this up of the Hunger Games, the four Hunger Game films. I quite enjoyed them. I don't think they're the greatest, fantasy sci-fi films of all time, but they are fun to watch. Basically about a futuristic world that had a civil war, and the main central government won the war, and so you have a central city, and then you have like the outskirts of the city, 12 districts. There's actually 13, but at the beginning, there's 12 districts, and um, they work and they send, their riches to the city or whatever. And so all the people that live in the city are living the high life, and all the people that are living, who started the rebellion in the first place and lost, all the 12 um, districts are all like poor and almost like slaves to the city or whatever, right? So she ends up. So there's a thing that happens every year. It's called the Hunger Games, where basically each of the districts sends a woman and a man, or a boy and a girl, anybody over 13 or whatever. There's a lottery where they draw names or whatever, and one tribute a female and one tribute a male from each of the 12 districts uh, go to war in the Hunger Games, and it's broadcast on television for everybody's enjoyment. But it's basically a fight to the death where there's only one person that survives, and then he's poured on, or she's poured on lavishly by the city, and that person moves to the city and becomes a famous like rock star kind of person, right? So and this is basically the downfall of that whole organization, and it's basically her as the spiritual leader of the rebellion, and Donald Sutherland as the president of the city or whatever, and they clash or whatever, right? So it's pretty good if you like sci-fi fantasy films. All right, and is there anything else, or is that everything? Is that everything? That is everything for now. All right, and I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some recommendations on what. Oh no, I forgot. I also bought something else, which I buy occasionally, but I don't get around to buying a lot of. Where's the room? Where can I put all this stuff? All right, let's just pull it out. All right, so I was in a part of the city that I hadn't been in a while, and I had like 30, 40 minutes to kill before I picked my son up from judo. And so there's a record store, a used record store nearby, so I decided to go check it out. And I found two albums. I found my favorite Joni Mitchell album of all time on LP, and that is for $18. I found The Hissing of Summer Lawns. All right. Um, I think this is her best album, but I may be biased because this was the first ever Joni Mitchell album I listened to, and when I listened to it, I really enjoyed it, and I just listened to it over and over again. I listened to Blue afterwards, which most consider her best album, but I really, really like this one. It's kind of got a jazzy, folky feel to it. And if you want to listen to Joni Mitchell, this is an album that you can't go wrong with. And then you got one of the greatest kind of like punk rock um, albums from a woman of all time, and that's Horses by Patti Smith. All right. This has the greatest version of all the different versions that have ever been of Gloria, Gloria, Gloria. She does the best version of it, I think, and that best version is on this album. Um, if you have not listened to this, listen to it. It's an extremely good album, and I would put both of these on a list of the greatest albums of all time. That's why I picked them up. $20 for this one and $18 for this one. Can't go wrong. Not bad pricing. All right. And yeah, that's everything. I think so. Yep. All right. So hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave me a thumbs up. Think about subscribing to the channel, and I will talk to you in my next video. You have a great day, and bye for now.